Hey, welcome back for part two, day one of our video lecture. We have about three more slides, a few images to finish up before you're done for the day, and you guys can jump into your reading questions and vocab. So, breaking the color line in sports, we touched on this a little bit last unit as well with Jackie Robinson. We're going to talk about him a little bit more today. So, in 1945, Jackie Robinson crossed the color line. Branch Rickey, who went to Ohio Wesleyan, obviously that's who the gymnasium's named after, in the road that runs right there into Henry Street, was the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers. And while he was at Ohio Wesleyan, played and managed at the same time. This was a little bit different back in college back then. He was a player coach for the baseball team at Ohio Wesleyan, and he had an African-American player on his team. So he was used to being integrated. Obviously, Ohio Wesleyan, being a liberal arts university, was very forward-thinking in what they were doing. And so he was accustomed to this. This wasn't something that was different to him. And Delaware, Ohio, wasn't a segregated area. It was very integrated. And so he is bringing with him stuff that he learned here in Delaware at Ohio Wesleyan, and he's instituting it at a much larger level, at a bigger scale, obviously with the Brooklyn Dodgers. A lot of you have probably seen the movie 42. I know the Strand, when that movie first came out about Jackie Robinson, actually had a big showing for it. A lot of the local celebrities, as well as the stars of the movie, came and saw the movie there at the Strand because it's such a big thing. It's part of Delaware history. It's someone who is going to change the way athletics works, Branch Rickey, and his foundation was set here in Delaware, Ohio. Many players refused to play with Jackie Robinson, not because of his skill or because of the attention, because they didn't know how people would receive them playing with an African American. A lot of these guys might be from the South or from areas or hometowns, small hometowns, where if they go back home, they have other jobs. And if people say, well, hey, you play with an African American, I'm no longer buying food from your general store. Or I'm no longer coming to see you and you're my doctor. There's a lot of obstacles that they have to navigate around their personal lives. And some of them were using racism and didn't want to play with Jackie Robinson for that reason as well. Jackie Robinson was a victim of racially charged taunts constantly during games. But something that Branch Rickey told him was like, you can't retaliate, because if you retaliate, then you're no longer the victim, and people are no longer going to be sympathetic to our cause and what we're trying to accomplish. Now, Jackie Robinson, being a World War II veteran, was used to kind of this taunting, was used to the hard, skilled life and stuff like that. And so he's able to channel a lot of this. He doesn't let his frustration boil over. He never speaks out against anybody. And his teammates start to realize that, and his teammates start coming to his defense because they realize that he can't defend himself. And so they start coming out and they start defending him publicly. They start standing up for him at games, telling people to sit down and be quiet, and they start accepting him. And once people start doing that on his own team, people in his own community then are going to do that in New York, and then it's going to start to spread really slowly. Football became integrated in 1946. 4 players joined the NFL. So, you see the experiment work with one person, with Jackie Robinson. Now the NFL is going to take 4 minorities, integrate them into their organization, and it's easier with 4 than 1 because now you have strength in numbers. When those taunts are getting really tough, you feel like the frustration is going to boil over, you have someone else that's going through it with you. And that's one thing Jackie Robinson actually said afterwards. He was like, I really wish there was someone else. Someone that I could go and talk to, that I could relate to, that was going through the same experience as me. Because when you're by yourself and you're all alone, you can't really channel your frustration. You have no one to talk to. You feel really isolated. You feel kind of quarantined. All right? And that's what makes it tough. So it was really tough on him. And it got easier for those that came after him. Jackie Robinson's number 42 is actually the only number in Major League Baseball that's retired in every single Major League park. When you go there, you'll see a blue 42 on the fence. So no player since, I think Mariano Rivera was the last player for the New York Yankees to wear the number 42. So it is officially retired. And they have one day in April, which would have been coming up, which is Jackie Robinson Day, the day that he broke the color barrier, where every single player wears the number 42 in his honor. And so you just see how they celebrate that history and how it changed the game of baseball and changed athletics forever. Basketball became integrated in the 1950s, so our third major sport in the United States becomes integrated. By the mid-1950s, the color line's starting to disappear. Once we get into the 60s and 70s, you're seeing teams that are very equally divided with minorities and white athletes, all right? And so you're starting to see this transformation take place. You see on the next slide a baseball card of Jackie Robinson, an exceptional athlete, someone that endured so much, was the Rookie of the Year and MVP. I mean, he was a spectacular baseball player. But more important than his attributes is what he did as a player, is what he accomplished socially, which was obviously the integration of a major organization and leading to further integration of other organizations. Next, desegregation of the armed forces. We talked about this last unit as well. This is the first area that we are going to desegregate, is the armed forces. The military is still segregated after World War II until an incident occurs. Army veteran Isaac Woodward came back from fighting. He's on his bus trip on his way home, and then he gets beaten for taking too long to wait to go to the restroom. So he's standing in line to go to the restroom. People feel like he's taking too long, so he's beaten by the other passengers on the bus. He becomes blind from this incident. So here's a veteran who goes and serves in Europe, helps defeat the Nazis, helps protect our country, comes back home, a place where he should feel safe, a place where he shouldn't have to worry about physical harm like he did when he was out fighting a war, and becomes permanently blind. And this is an experience that's really going to sway the president to do something. Truman becomes enraged by this. Truman said, I'm going to try and remedy the situation. And how is he going to remedy the situation? On July 26, 1948, Truman signed Executive Order 9981, which we already know what that does. This desegregated the military, all right? And so his way of remedying this situation is, I'm going to start integrating society slowly. It's not all going to happen at once, because if he put out an order that says everything has to be integrated, there'll be pushback. And he can't handle that. He doesn't have the resources to handle this. And so when he starts to slowly integrate the military, he's winning by these ideas then being presented back into the communities by these soldiers. And so people are going to see this and see this integration at the military level. And then when they come back home from the military, are slowly going to start integrating themselves back into their society and start bringing those beliefs with them as well. And so this is a slow process, but it's a process that has to start somewhere. And obviously the military makes the most sense because we're in complete control of the military, so we can dictate everything that happens. Civil rights organizations that challenge discrimination. You have the Congress of Racial Equality, which is CORE. They're committed to nonviolent direct action as a means of change. One of the big members of CORE is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent action, civil disobedience, things of that nature. The National Urban League, which focused on helping African Americans achieve success, specifically just in the North. All right. So the National Urban League is a group for Northern African Americans and civil rights. So places like Indiana, places in Southern Ohio, or in Kentucky, or in Pennsylvania, or in Virginia, or in Maryland, that they are going to focus their attention. They're not going into the Deep South. That's going to be CORE and the NAACP and these other groups that are going into Alabama, Mississippi, and places like that to try and get civil rights movement. The NAACP, their efforts to promote civil rights legislation, we saw this with their leader, Thurgood Marshall. We know him from the Brown versus Boards of Education Supreme Court case. And then you have the Legal Defense and Educational Fund, which is for defeating segregation through the court system. So this fund that's set up for African Americans that are facing discrimination and segregation are able to pull assets, and they're able to use this money that's kind of pooled together to go into local courts, to go into federal courts, and fight these laws. because, again, a lot of them are struggling economically, so they couldn't do this on their own. They need the support of this legal defense team, this legal defense fund. All right? Our next slide here is an image of Thurgood Marshall. You can see the NAACP poster in the background. You can also see the different volumes of legal text that he's reading through. Very influential member, just as important as someone like Jackie Robinson or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X when it comes to the civil rights movement. It's someone that you're going to hear a lot of as we move forward into the 60s and 70s as well. All right. So that is the last slide for today. For Monday, I will come back to you guys with another 2-part video lecture on day 2 on Tuesday. What you guys need to be doing, you guys need to start on your reading questions and vocab. Remember, your quiz is on Wednesday for part 1 of your vocab, and part 2 quiz is on Friday. All right. So make sure you guys are getting after that. Make sure you're also taking some time, get outside, go for a walk, go enjoy good weather. Take time for yourself. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. And hopefully we'll be getting back together here not too soon because I'm getting tired of just talking to a camera. I like the interaction. Remember we talked about, why do you pick this job? I took the job as a teacher so I can interact with my students and talk to kids every day. Talking to a computer screen, not really fun. All right? But I hope to see you guys soon. Keep working away. If you have any questions, put them on the discussion board. You can email me. I'll have another Q&A video before a writing assessment. So just make sure you're staying up. Make sure you're logging into Canvas every day. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday, all right? By the way, solid outfit coming out after spring break. Really knocked it out of the park today. We'll see what Tuesday has in store. Peace. I'm out.